to cloud. And good evening, folks. And we have Michael Walker, VA3MW, to give us a little overview about remote HF operation using various new tools. So I think most people know who he is, but for those who don't, he's given many presentations at Dayton and on various things, including Flex, including remote operations. So with that, I'm going to throw it over to Mike and let him carry on.
Okay, I just want to make sure, are you seeing the top bar too, or just the presentation?
Looks wonderful.
Okay, so thank you for having me. A little bit about me. I've been a ham since, well, a long time, 74, when it was a cool thing to do in high school. And I've surprisingly been at it ever since, and I've found that it's probably gotten, of all the jobs I've had in my lifetime, and I'm just over 60 now, it has played a key part in all but one of them. And that one didn't last very long. So, you know, it's funny how we get into our hobbies or whatever, and we tend to know people, and it gets the door open for different things like this. So I've been pretty pleased about it. There isn't any part of the hobby I probably haven't tried. I might try it and move on. HF continues to be my love. I'm a contester, mostly sideband. I'll hunt and peck in CW. I'll do VHF contesting, and I just always like trying the new stuff that comes to the hobby. And that comes from my mentors. A couple of people here in Ontario who were, heck, even one of them had done Spark Gap, Newt V3HF. And they all said to me, don't get stuck in one part of the hobby. You know, they were probably 60 when they met me, which freaked my mom out, by the way. Why are you hanging around with all these old people? But that's a whole other story. And I didn't. I tried different stuff, and the first HF rig was an HR10B and a DX40. And I hauled that around, actually. So days of not having a portable. Let's see if this works.
Hey, Mike, we are seeing the browser bar.
Okay, let's get rid of that. That's what I wanted to know. How's that?
Better, thanks.
Thanks for letting me know. So back in 2005, I moved from one part of Toronto to the other, and I got into town. And by the way, this is part of a presentation I gave at Dayton a few years ago. And you know, you move into a place. Hey, what's on the air? I've been off the air for a month or two, so I threw a wire up in the backyard and got on 40 one night. It was about this time of the year. Actually, it was late November. I couldn't hear anything. Oh, maybe the band's dead. So next night, band's dead. No, it was just noise. I was fortunate that my XYL had a cottage and northeast of here in the Kawarthas. I think Paul and certainly Peter will know where that is, and a bunch of people. So I started to operate from up there during the summer, and then eventually got into remote operation thanks to things like Remote Rig and the TS480, Ham Radio Deluxe, and Skype. Won't go into those details. And this contraption on the bottom right of the screen I'll go into later. And a lot of reasons now today you want to run remote is noise floor is always a big one. Maybe you're downsizing, you're going into assisted living. Very common thing now. We're getting 3 or 4 grumpy old hams like me get together, and their fourth guy's got a big station, and they build one up so they can use it remotely, and they pay them money for internet, et cetera, et cetera. You get the idea. And they are able now to get on the air and still do their rag chewing. There are 3 phases to remote operating, and I'll sort of touch on them. There's that phase where I'm going away for a day or a weekend. I'm just going to leave all my radios turned on so I can use it on the weekend. Maybe I'm going away for a couple of weeks, and so it should be okay when I get back. And then there's the repeater operator phase. If you've ever been the custodian in a repeater, where you want to turn it on, leave it, and not come back to it for a year or two. And that's the phase I'm in. I go 6 months at a time without seeing it. And so I tell people to imagine every button in your ham shack. What if you couldn't push it? And that's what you have to consider. So some things you need to worry about. The radio. I work at Flex. It's been a 3-year job now, sort of a retirement job, because I came out of the data protection, data recovery world, where I never had a day off. Even though I had days off, they still called you, and I was responsible for a war room for data recovery for 9/11. So I spent 3 weeks in New Jersey at the Hilton across from the airport, managing a team of guys that were trying to recover data for
No, my
banks
neck of
like
the woods.
yeah, you're in neck of the woods, Merrill Lynch, Cantor Fitzgerald, and I know you've heard all these guys. And so you've been in a hotel long enough when the guy says, here's how you get in the kitchen at 2 o'clock in the morning. Here's all the food. You want to make a sandwich, whatever. The cooks are, you get the idea. So the internet becomes, at least in most cases, the backbone of your system. So it's got to work. You don't need a lot of it, but it better work right. How do you turn all the AC stuff on and off? How you turn off all the DC stuff on and off? Antenna control, if you're using rotatable beams. The simple part, if you put up a multi-band antenna, you're done. You don't have to worry about any of that, which is great. Rotor control and that sort of thing. So let's talk a little bit about the internet. Speed is not as critical as latency and something called buffering. And buffering is bad. Buffering's okay in a movie because we don't care if whatever we're watching on Netflix shows up 30 seconds late, as long as our movie plays. And if you watch Netflix really closely, you'll see frames and pixels and stuff dropping all the time, but your eye fills that in. Well, that's not necessarily works the same way in HF sideband and certainly not in CW. So this is where the latency needs to be as short as possible. And if you're a contester, that latency needs to be short as possible because the turnover times can impact your runs if you're a run operator. But I'll take that latency that I have right now, which is about 150 milliseconds, over the ability to hear stations versus not being able to hear them at all. So things are a trade-off. In the flex world, you need about, and the key number is upload speed from the radio. So you need about, on a minimum, I'll say 500 kilobits. So it's not as thin or light as a remote rig, but a maximum 2 meg is nice, depending how many waterfalls you're running and how much data you're really moving. You also have I use remote computer screens. We'll talk a bit about that. And then what do you do if, this is the first problem I had in year winter one. It was about December, the internet went out. I waited and I called the ISP and I said, hey, my internet's out. And you go, oh yeah, it was a Monday, by the way. I said, we pushed out new firmware to your modem last night. Could you just unplug it and plug it back in? Road trip. So it's 90 minutes up there, 90 minutes back. On the way, for you Canadians, I stopped at Canadian Tire, picked up a Christmas tree timer, and at 3 o'clock in the morning, the modem would reboot. So the worst case scenario, if that happened again or the modem hung up, the router and the modem rebooted once a day about 3 in the morning. And by the way, through the winter, I still do that today, even using far more advanced routers and stuff that allow that to happen. There are tools that do that. Digital Logger IO makes a big switch that's about $130. Dave, you've used one? Do you use one?
Yeah, I have the Web Switch Pro. It's $170. Nice thing about it is you can set it up. I have mine set up to ping MSN and Google every 5 minutes. And if it goes three consecutive times without a ping response from either of the two sites, it will then reboot the router and the cable modem.
Yeah, I had one. I sold it. I'll tell you why in a minute. There was no user GUI to it, right? The admin GUI was really complicated and
Node-RED.
very powerful tool. Now, maybe with Node-RED now it's easier, right? And so we do things like intermittent speed tests. If you really want to test your internet, know if your internet's any good, this is the test I recommend. DSLreports.com/speed test. And what you want to watch is, these are numbers you pay for, but this buffer bloat number. If it's an F, you'll find that your streaming is not very good. C or B or A is better. And there's whole discussion groups on how do I do that? And there's actually an out of the box way to do that without you having to become a network expert. But, and speaking of networks, the network is now becoming such an integral part of the ham shack that if it's foreign to you, you're in for a bit of education. It's not real hard. There's about 4 key points you need to know. But if you just think it's magic, then you'll run into a few roadblocks that will probably, in the remote world, need some help with. we have a video on the Flex site that says keep everything on the same subnet. It's a term you want to remember, and bridge everything, which keeps everything on the same subnet. So So here's a digital logger IO switch. That's an older one on the bottom right. It's got a full web-based panel, and you can turn every socket on and off, and etc. Microbit, the one above it, is by the Rig Expert guys. It's a nice web-based switch. And I use the bottom left units from Digital Logger IO because I can plug that right into a Raspberry Pi and have it turn that socket on and off. I use a lot of those. They're not very expensive. It's like 20 bucks each. And you can either have it normally open or normally closed. They'll handle 10 or 15 amps reasonably well, although I think Dave melted one, or was it somebody melted one? No, it was
Not
another
me.
friend of mine. And, you know, if you get one, open it up and solder the AC power plugs because they're a little thin there. But did you melt one?
No.
Okay, I know who it was. It was nobody on this call. They don't make one for 220. So in the 220 world, I say this cautiously, if you need to turn something on and off at 220 volts, there's not anything really easy over the shelf. I made my own using Potter and Brumfield relays and certainly wouldn't pass electrical inspection, but that's my risk. So even though it would pass, but that's what the commercial guys do. There's a whole lot of remote switches out there. I use the Kmtronic series. I use two. I use switches from my Raspberry Pi, and I use these switches that do not run on the Pi. And the reason I use these switches to control key items is that A, they remember if they're turned on, and B, I never reboot them. So I actually have one, in fact, that controls the computer power. And I never want that off unless I physically turn it off. And more importantly, it does have a web interface to it, so I can get to it later if I have to, if my Node-RED interface fails for whatever reason. So it's sort of two paths. And every month there's different remote switches on. You can just say, hey Google, turn my rig on now with Alexa tools and Google tools and whatever. So, and that's just getting better. I don't do any of it, but there are lots of people that do. And then antenna control, there's one antenna, two antennas, four. I run 403A remote antenna switch, 2x8 switch, because I have a Flex 6600, which is like having two radios. So one goes in one side of the radio, goes in one side, the other side goes in the other side, and both spectral capture units have access to all 7 of my antennas. So it's about $700. It's expensive, and I think it's worth every penny because, again, it is also land-based. And the more you move stuff into land-based stuff, the more it's easy to integrate with everything else and get away from half-century-old RS-232 stuff that, looks like this. By the way, that's out of the back of the radio. So there's a whole lot of stuff I could go over that I won't at this time. A remote rotor control, something that's got an RS-232 port on it. Mostly anything new can be done or modified to do so for if you have a beam. There's all sorts of color. I didn't even put the ERC stuff on here. I generally have been using the Idiom Press Easy Rotor. And it's a kit. It wires into my high gain rotor. I think I've got spare one sitting right there, all wired up, ready to go. But I've also been using Easy Rotor Control for my satellite stuff, and they're all fine for rotor control. And I'm not going into depth of any of these, but if you want to know more details, you can ask me now or later or whatever. And then the big question I get is, what about lightning? So at the moment, we don't have an app that unscrews the coax from the antenna switch and throws it out the door. So what do? I just ground everything. Is that going to help me in a direct straight? Not a chance. So I live with it. And, touch wood, I'm okay. I suspect someday it'll happen, but it's been since 2005. Although I have had people that throw antenna feed lines out the door, and then the power line got struck and it came in through the LAN cable and took out, that way. So unless you literally take your radio, unplug it from everything and put it in the box, you're at risk. And I highly recommend reading Ward Silver's book on lightning, because if you thought you knew something about grounding, you probably don't. And I saw Bill's shaking his head. I saw his presentation at Contest University, and I thought I knew something about lightning. I now know I know nothing about lightning and ground protection, other than it all needs to rise and sink at the same time. And the repeater operators will tell you about that sort of bonding. And that's how repeaters survive. So what else can go wrong? So imagine you power failure your house and you turn it on. You need everything to come back in a state that you can deal with it remotely, because they happen. I had a big outage a number of years ago. The station went offline. I got a warning from Ontario Hydro. It's out for 5 hours in the middle of January. It was a big ice storm. The power came back on, so I waited a little longer. A day later, nothing. Phoned up the ISP and said, "Hey, is my modem online?" Nope, not there. So I knew I was still out. And what had happened was it got so cold that the UPS froze. And I could live with the UPS freezing, but when it froze, it turned off all its outputs, and that controlled all the routers, or the router, the switch, and the modem, and it never powered back up. So I drive up to the cottage and I snowshoe into the boathouse, and from about 100 yards away, I can hear teet, teet, of the UPS in alarm mode still 4 days later. So unplugged it, tossed it out in the snow for electronic scrap, plugged everything in, replaced the UPS in the spring, because I really don't have a lightning issue in the wintertime. And this is for all hams. Chokes. Chokes are your friend. If you're not choking everything, I guarantee you're not hearing everything, or you're hearing a lot less than you could be. And they're not only to protect RFI and transmission, but they also protect for common mode currents just in reception. And I have seen in this house and my remote, even on 80 meters, choking the feed line at both ends in the middle, got me almost in the house. It got me from an S9 noise floor to S6. And I highly recommend Googling Yankee Contest Clipper Club and chokes. Look for this document and read it. I buy chokes in the 25s or 50s now. And then some really good tools for noise, things like a KX2. And I have a 705, an ICOM 705, and I've walked around with a short antenna on it trying to find noise, and you hold it up right beside my network switch and it's going, it's on VHF, it's all the way through the spectrum, and that one ended up in the trash too. So I now have got my VHF noise floor down to about minus 100 dB, which is, the Flex guys know how I can do that, but that's sort of okay, but it's about the equivalent of S3, and I'd like S1, but there's some other noise in the neighborhood that is I can't get rid of. It's outside my control. But the one thing I can tell you is I guarantee if you're complaining about noise in the low bands, 80% of it is in your house. So unless you can absolutely, everybody says, oh, it's a plasma TV, but it may not be. Go look for it. So it's really worth the effort to do if you're a low band operator. Okay, we'll skip this one for now. Here's the one thing I do when I operate, and I'll show you screenshots of this. I highly recommend in almost any environment, keep a PC in the network beside the radio remotely. And the reason you want to do this is for your digital modes and whatever, you can run all those items on that PC. And then all you have to do is connect to the PC with any one of the multiple different remote tools from TeamViewer, AnyDesk, Google Desktop, whatever, all these without even having to get into the VPN world. And then, which is great. Then you just log into the computer from whatever computer you have, whether it's a Chromebook, a MacBook, a PC, and you know what, your station's configured. And if your buddy wants to happen to borrow your station for a minute because he wants to work some FT8 or whatever, you can just talk it through him.
I did last year after you got the new truck. Now I'm reading it again.
Anyway, so that is just, and I've learned that one year I tried to do it without it by tunneling RS-232 ports back to me. It was pretty cool, but it was a pain in the butt because I was on the road. I was traveling for EMC at the time, and I couldn't operate my station remotely. And so this is what makes this so beautiful, and also limits how much data you're moving upstream, which is something you really want to do. And in 15 or 16 years of operating, the PC running remotely has never been my problem of not being able to operate. Everything else has tried to, take me off the air, but it's never been the PC. And invest in Windows 10 Pro. Spend the extra $100, just put it on for so many reasons. It's got built-in remote desktop. You can control your updates. if you're following Flex reflectors, you'll read about people who have COM port corruption or DAX corruptions. I really try to blow up my station. I have the one at the cottage and one here, and I have never had to deal with DAX corruption, which we see a lot of. Some people do, some people don't. I would really love to do a postmortem on the computer, because I really think it comes down to they tried to do something to make it better, and it's just impacting things. And I know Dave has helped, and he's helped us out many times where he goes, here, I'll fix it for you, and just dialed in. And I just operate my stuff right out of the box. I install it from the CD or the USB key, let Windows Defender run, and then I put my applications on and call it a day. Dave, you want 30 seconds to add on that? Because I know you've got a whole career making these things run.
Yeah, the Windows 10 stuff, the latest build, 2004 H2 is very stable now. Installing with the latest either 2.6.2 or 3.1.12 of the Flex software is very stable with the CAT and DAX drivers. Audio issues, not only with Flex drivers, but with the USB codecs from ICOM and Yaesu and Kenwood are also very stable now. And for those in the US, there are places that wholesale Windows 10 licenses for as cheap as like $12. So you can get a Windows 10 Pro license for as cheap as $12, and you can download the installable ISO from Microsoft for free.
Great. By the way, the new computers, if you've ever heard of an M2 drive, which is a stick that plugs in the computer, I'm building a new computer one day with Windows on a USB 3 key. The install from start to finish, and to the point where it went to get some updates, was under 4 minutes. And so on my desktop computers, I have now M2 keys, which run the operating system, my drive C, and everything else, my documents, I've moved over to old-fashioned spinning media. This is a little more reliable, I guess, in the long run. So if you're looking to upgrade, and by the way, where do I buy for a computer? And I tell people this, whatever's on sale at Costco. They're more than fast enough. So I showed this picture earlier. This was a, when I first started this, I had it in a nice cabinet. I made it look nice and pretty, almost like Peter's amplifier control box for 2 meters. And then you start making changes, and pretty and nice is a pain in the ass to unplug or debug stuff. So back about 2015, I right beside the operating box, which I'll show you, I had this big piece of 4x8 sheet of plywood, and I just started bolting stuff to it. So there's, I had the network switch, this is actually not a router. This was actually just a Wi-Fi access point. I had a Pi running some VPN stuff, because I still do use a VPN. And by the way, this is all gone. This all got nuked. I had a network monitor that its only job in life is to do what Dave's stuff was doing, is to ping 3 or 4 websites like Google, Yahoo, CNN. And if any of those don't answer 3 times within 20 minutes, and the internet's really out, then it will power cycle the modem and the router, which was an IQ router at the time. That's its only job. That's the only thing I had to do. And that worked amazingly. And to this day, I still run that same Pi doing that job. Lightningmaps.org. If you've gone there to watch live lightning, I'm actually have a receiving station there. And that's this sensor here. Network switch. This big mess in the middle is a Raspberry Pi on a board that had 16 relays, all wired up to all the GPIO ports. And we weren't doing Node-RED then, so it was pretty clumsy, but it worked. And then my first Kmtronic web switch for the rest of stuff. And then I got into DIN wiring, because I had 5-volt lines and 12-volt lines and relay keying lines. And despite my best efforts to try to keep it nice and organized and sort of put together, it lasted like that for a week. And then it's like programming in Node-RED. Then I just needed to make a change, and different wires. Anyway, you get the idea. But it's on a board. It was at eye level. It was easy to debug stuff. This is funny. Here we go. It's the next picture, and where's the picture? So this is the current box, and with everything in it, the door closes. The only heat in that comes from the amplifier and the computer that's on all the time. I could have replaced the Windows 10 PC right here with a Nook, but it doesn't produce enough heat in the winter. I needed something to pump out some heat to keep this box warm. So we have a Flex 6600, a Flex 67. Actually, it's a 6500 right now. That's for the office to use. We have a PGXL amplifier, and yes, you can see we have the required 12 inches space all around on all sides. Nope. And by the way, I do not have a heat issue with that radio running with what we call MEFA. It's just doesn't really produce that much heat. It produces heat, but it's never been scary. In the summertime, I have these fans turned on all the time. In the wintertime, they're taped over, but I keep these ports in the bottom open to draw heat. And I've got big fans up here that can draw heat off the top if I need to remotely. All three of these, by the way, have 3 unique fan systems, so that if one fails, the other 2 continue to run. This fan here is controlled by Node-RED. This fan's got its own thermostat. These 2 fans are controlled by a PC controller that I bought off eBay for $4. They work really well. So that's the whole thing. The door closes. Let's see if the next screen. There we go. So let's zoom in on the so this is we're going to look at this part right now. So I have 2 of these Kmtronic switches now. They're actually controlled by Node-RED. I have the lightning map sensor. I've got this Pi that's got the network monitoring tools and the lake level, because I put an ultrasonic sensor on it, because why not? This is my 5-volt or my 12-volt power supply for accessories. This is a very handy tool. The StarTech is a 4-port RS-232 device. It has a USB interface. It plugs into this Pi for Node-RED. And remember I said I use these digital I/O switches for turning AC on and off. For $20, I can't build something like that. So, another Node-RED IP. Actually, this is the Node-RED Pi here. This is the network monitoring stuff here. They're interchangeable. So here's my inventory. I generally use a Maestro for operating. I have the Power Genius, which is LAN-based. I have the 403A antenna switch, which is LAN-based. I should have put a picture up there. LP100 watt meter, I highly recommend. If you're trying to measure sideband power and anything else, throw it away, because it's not doing it. The LP100 and the LP700, I guess there's a 500 too, actually calculate the proper peak envelope for sideband. And so please don't try to operate and try to drive your watt meter peak indicator, because you're just going to end up overdriving the radio. It wasn't until I got this and I wanted to check some stuff for Dave, our firmware programmer for the PGXL. Ultimately, he got one as well. I went, Dave, I now believe that I'm peaking at exactly 1500 watts. And it is an amazing tool. And it's no wonder he sells so many of them. And I don't know if any of you have one, but if you're a sideband operator, it doesn't a whole whack of other cool stuff. I haven't scratched the surface on it. And then you can see my list of antennas. I am blessed with 90-foot trees. So I have this big inverted L for 160, and it's a common feed 80 for ADCW with elevated radials. An 80-meter inverted V with its apex at about 85 feet, sitting in a pine tree. A 40-meter 2-element beam that does northwest and southeast. It cost me about $25 in parts, and a couple of trees in the back 40. An inverted V, a stepper, an HF6V. I trained the stepper with a T2X with the Indian press rotor control on it, and nothing special. I've got a 48-foot Samson tower, and it's guide, and I've had that for a while. So I talked about running at the remote end. I won't go over a lot of this, but it's just so critical. It just makes it so much easier because you only have one computer to maintain for a remote operator. And I'll get you guys the slide deck in a PDF format so you can read this later. And why I went to Flex. Okay, here's the sales pitch. They're built in the US. And I went to Flex long before I started working here. I saw the 6300 come out with a LAN connector on it at Dayton. I talked to Steve Hicks and I said, what can I do through that LAN connector? And he said pretty much anything. Well, Dave, as he let us down since then, you can pretty much do anything through that LAN connector, right?
With the API, there's a lot you can do to that radio that you just can't do to other radios.
So I bought in. I walked home with one. If you're thinking of shopping, you have free shipping, 2-year warranty, 30-day return policy. This is the only commercial you're gonna have to listen to. Remote is built into the radio from the ground up. It's not an afterthought. You can operate it without a VPN to get back to your radio. We have it built in called SmartLink. You do not have to be a network genius at all to make it work. And they have the Flex Maestro, which is a big, nice control head. Here's mine. It's sitting here on an arm just to get it off the desk. In contest mode, I bring it over and sit it down on the desk, you know. So when I first saw the Maestro at Dayton too, I said to Gerald, and I wasn't working for Flex. He goes, "Do you know what a Maestro is?" And I went, "No, I have no idea." He goes, "But I can tell you what I need." And he goes, "What do you need?" I says, "I need a control head, like the old FM radio days. I need a control head for my remote HF radio." And Dave, can you imagine the color draining from his face when I said that? Because he thought someone, to this day, he thinks someone told me. And I said, "No, I just knew what I needed." And sure enough, they uncover it. And I said, and I saw this, it's got an 8-inch display on it. Everybody else is 7-inch. And so I'm so glad you didn't make it small. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then there's just lots of station integration stuff. You can, any contesters here, you can just put your hand up. Anybody use CW Skimmer? You know, if you do digital modes, you don't have to go buy any hardware. Well, you have to buy Skimmer, but you don't have to go buy any hardware. This just runs on your PC. And we have a lot of videos about this on our website. So without going into, Dana, good afternoon. See, you made it. You're muted. You're getting grayer though. At least I have an excuse. Dana is like handheld coverage away from me. So good to see you.
2 wires.
Yeah. Yeah, we both can't operate 6 meters at the time. That's why I took down my 6-meter antenna here in the city, and it's all at the cottage. Anyways, all this integration just works. You can run, in fact, Dana, right now I've got 2 slices open on 2 meters running MSK 144 and FT8 simultaneously, same antenna. In another world, you'd probably have to run 2 antennas, 2 amplifiers, double everything. So for the weak signal guys, or even 6 meters, 6 meters is great. 6 meters opens, I open 3 slices. I got one on 260 for scatter. I got one on FT8 in case FT8 opens. I got another one open on MSK 144 just in case you're scattered, and I can watch all 3 of them at the same time. And 1 antenna, 1 feed line. And you can do that on well, you can do 2 of them on some of the radios and 3 or 4 or 8 of them on the other radios. And I took this picture not an hour ago. This is my shack at home. So you can see I'm actually looking at this. I'm presenting up in the screen up here. This I want to talk about your shack layout, as Paul has shown you as well. New monitors are incredibly cheap. That monitor is 3440 by 1440. It was on sale at Best Buy in Canada for $319. Okay, and it's nice and it's light. And you want to make sure you get your monitor where your natural view, if you're like a contester, natural view position is. I'm now starting to move the stuff out of here in the middle. It'll go away and I'll ultimately bring these 2 monitors down. I'm just trying to figure out the layout. This is my contesting radio, control head to the remote flex. This is the 6600M, mostly for work and testing. And it runs, and we have a flex control knob which is just like a VFO. It's just like being there. And you've probably heard some of us talk about Stream Deck, which allows us to program those buttons to do almost anything, whether you're flipping in a receiving antenna, changing bands, adjusting this or that or whatever. And we could do a whole hour just on Stream Deck. Actually, I can't. Other people can, but mine's still the way it came. And yeah, I had to blow some money on the 4K monitor. Dana's seen this picture already because that's what the Geochron is. Or it's good for watching CNN to see what's going on in your world. So let's talk about Node-RED. NoRed is an event-based software wiring system. It's designed really for almost exactly what we do. And it whether we're communicating from a watt meter to a radio to an antenna switch, and it's not dedicated to Flex. I mean, Flex integrates to it so beautifully, but you can make it work with a Kenwood TS480 if you want to get carried away, you know, anything you want. And you may not even have your radio in here other than to read frequency. And I'm going to show you, yesterday I asked for all the dashboards everybody's using. So a big bulk of this presentation is to show you what people are doing. And a lot of these people, and Dave would be the first to attest to these, are not programmers. They're logically inclined, but they're not programmers by a long shot. And a lot of the stuff we do here is easy to share. So it was Paul, right, that wanted to get the LA1K going. He had, you know, was amazed that he actually fessed up the RS-232 communications, because I thought was super verboten a while ago, right? I know people that had tried and got told they were going to be sued for playing with it, and but you get the idea.
I'm surprised that he gave that information up.
I was literally blown away. So the other nice thing about Node-RED is the user interface when you're done is web-based. So now you don't have to be, if you're remote, whether it's upstairs, across the country, different building, you can pull out your iPhone, and with using some cool VPN tools. What was the other one? Tail? I have to look it up because I actually set it up to do it. Tail Scale for you know, not a poor man's VPN, but if you just need to be able to access one box while you're outside your house from your iPhone, you can do it. Tail Scale. I just learned that 1 or 2 weeks ago that somebody came up with that. So that's what Node-RED is about. You edit it in a browser. I'll probably bring up a browser later when we're done so you can see it. There are a ton of libraries that interface to weather stations, Nest, Alexa, Google, whatever. All these little plugins are just available to make it so much easier.
All right, you want to hear a good one, Mike?
What's that?
You want to hear a good one? You want to hear a good one? I wrote a flow for my friend to basically, in the morning, it interfaces to his Google Calendar, and depending on the weather, will turn the heat or air conditioning on in his Tesla a half an hour before he leaves for his first appointment.
So you get the idea. So here's some of the documentation. There's awesome tutorials and cookbooks. Like I said, we're not going to go into that far into the weeds. Node-RED.org. And this is what it looks like. And this particular one that Dave and I talked about on our video a few weeks ago, and you can go watch the video to see this play, but this is the programming. And this is the application here. And what we have here are 4 relays, and I'll show you the device that plugged into the top of a Raspberry Pi. The board is $8 on Amazon, $7 on eBay, and it gives you 4 10-amp relays. So you know, you click on radio operate, it turns the 12-volt on. So you know, all know how relays work. Well, then we decided to do this little script, and we said, okay, hey, there's lightning. Wow, you push the lightning button down here at the bottom, you turn that on, and right away it turns off relay 3. Well, relay 3 says, let's turn off all the accessories like the watt meter and all that stuff. And then we're going to wait 5 seconds, and then we're going to turn we're going to power off the radio. Now, Flex radios have a remote power off button to do a 99% power down. And so so it'll start that, and it'll just bring it down. And then we're going to, after that 5 seconds, we're going to wait 10 seconds. And actually in a Flex world, it would be 30. But for the sake of the demonstration, I made it 10. Then after all that, we're going to turn off the DC power. So all the power's off. And that's programming. You don't have to open anything else other than maybe rename it and say how this looks. And you can learn that in a minute. And I have customers screaming at me I need like a bit more web interfacing. You know, how do I turn my radio off when I'm away? Well, here, just build this. We'll give you the code to it. You're done. And then hopefully you get a little carried away. That's how simple it is. And this is running on a Raspberry Pi. And so here's the device. This is this KS0212 device. They're $8 or $9 on Amazon, US Amazon. Plugs right in, and they already had they're called palettes. They already had a palette written for this actually device for Node Red. So you just click, 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 and you were done. No soldering. So here's my control panel. The next bunch of slides are just pictures. I can control all my web switches here. I've got temperature probes all over the place. I can see the power from my LP100, where the beam's pointing. I can quick pick, go to Europe or go to Japan. And this is what my stepper's doing, and et cetera, et cetera. And these lights change colors depending on if for some reason the data stops showing up from the rotor or the stepper, or if the radio's in transmit, this light goes red. And I also have gates written in there, so if the radio's in the transmit, don't send the stepper any tuning commands, type of thing. So and then we'll flip on to, this is kilo 9 kilos. People, you just get carried away. And this another guy, Kyle, said once he got going, like the curve is a little bit, and then he got going, he goes, I can see why I'm going to be up all night. So KK9K is gonna, he's got his LP100, he's got a Cat 500 antenna control. He's controlling his Flex 6400. He gets the weather off his tower. With graphing, he can change all his antennas. Again, all web-based. We've got, I forgot who this is. Santiago? Let's see. Yeah, it might be Santiago from Chile. Look at all the stuff he's doing. He's got 4 screens of stuff. He can also set his carrier level. Like, this is all Flex integration where you can control every feature. Turn the Vox on, carrier control, profiles. Wow, he's got profiles working. I haven't done that, but I can go ask him, say, if he hasn't posted, can I have your flow for your profiles, and get it working.
Hey, Mike, that's part of FR Stack for Pi.
Oh, is that FR Stack?
All that, there's a JSON for this for FR Stack integration.
Yeah, I won't even go there, but thank you. That's okay. Right. Thanks. If you have an HF Auto tuner, same thing. All this control the tuner again from a web page, and this has been the problem for a lot of remote operators, is the ability to, I get close, but I can't get right there. So that's pretty helpful. This is from Santiago, Hotel India 8 Sierra Mike X-ray. Same thing. He's got weather. He's got his metering, etc. He's got a bunch of things. He can look at his Raspberry Pi temperatures, disk space. He can ping stuff. You get graphing. I've used most of this stuff as well. It was actually pretty useful when I found out that look at the CPU on his Pi. I bet it's busy. It's hot, right? So this is also from Santiago, where is this an FR Stack integration too?
Yes, it is. That's the slice integration from FR Stack.
Yeah, we were like one step away for having a Node Red client. I can see it coming. Just handle the audio from the radio.
Just got to get the Opus audio Dave. Going.
It's that close. And then you'll write your own client to do whatever you want to do. The client being the part the user operates. So right now, Flex works with Windows, the Maestro, a MacBook, or iOS, iPad, or iPhone. His weather center. This is Brett, Whiskey X-Ray 7 X-Ray, sort of a whole bunch of different stuff. Whiskey Delta 9 Golf Yankee Mike. He's looking at, his tuner's turned on, the fan speed in the radio, the PA temperature, some of the internal voltages. His is antenna switching. Push to talk registration, definitely a Flex user. That's a security thing. I forgot who this is, but he's using all the GPIO ports to turn things on and off. Whiskey 9 Quebec, or Kilo X-Ray Kilo X-Ray Quebec. Same sort of thing as rotor. A lot of the stuff is built off stuff other people have done, and then it's easy to modify. And if it wasn't for people like Andreas N6NU, who did the core work on the stepper stuff and sort of got us going, and you can look at somebody else's code or their flows and go, oh, I see what he's doing. And then, which is because it's so visual, and this is what makes us so wonderful, and I'm going to nudge you, Dana. I think that's something you want to look into, because I know when Dana's got about 900 transverters and stuff. I think you could automate some of this, for switching and things. So he's got that puzzled look in his face. Either that or he's
Well, I've
listening to.
already got that in a hardware solution, but this is a lot more flexible. That's what's intriguing. Plus the cool visual too. I mean that, but it's the flexibility, because right now what I have is sort of set in stone. So if I make changes, it's a pain in the neck. But this way with the Java coding and stuff, it'd be perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all the stuff I learned from running a repeater system that helped me automate the rest of this. I don't know where I got that skill.
Yeah.
I used to be, I was president a couple times of the Toronto FM Communication Society. Here's another one, Whiskey 9, same guy, Kilo X-Ray Quebec. SPE amp, Spider, more SPE control. Who knows what he's got for an antenna switch? Antenna switches are dead nuts easy, because most of them just want some voltage. Even the old, my favorite was the old Heathkit stepper motor in it. When you used to go, I ran that for years. The thing was rock solid, and I was able to control that remotely. Here, Dave, here, you can talk about this one, Dave.
Yeah, this is my flow. What I do is I wrote it and did the dashboard so it's sized. This is on a 50-inch Sony TV as a monitor, 4K TV, and so I have the Flex Smart SVR running on the bottom, and the dashboard for Node-RED on the top. And on the left is a KPA 1500 interface. Then the Flex radio. I have the Antenna Genius 2x8, so I can see the top pan adapters on 80 meters on my G5 RV, and the bottoms on 40 meters on my Yagi. Internal meters in the radio, input voltage at the PA, fan speed and temperature, rotor control, outlet control from the DLI web switch, network information. I have 2 other pages for my dashboard that are not, that I didn't send you though. But this is my normal operating, what I would be looking at.
And the other thing too, in HF contesting, if you're an HF contester, you're flipping antennas all the time. And this is frustrating for a remote operator that can't reach up and grab and go, 1, 2, 2, 1, flip in and out the receiving antenna or whatever. So what I haven't done yet, but I will do, is I'm going to go buy a cheap Android tablet that's got a web browser on it and a touchscreen, and I'll park it on an arm, and I go, hey, I want the receiving antenna, and just tap it, and it'll do whatever I've scripted to. And I could probably do that in the Stream Deck too, but I need that. It's the one thing I miss. We're really bad at antenna switching from a rapid perspective. And I've finally convinced engineering, going, how important it is to turn in a receiving antenna on low band work when you need to go quickly there and back, just while the guy's signing, just to see if you can hear him any better. So, but you get the idea. Kilo 0 Victor Mike, KPA 500, Cat 500, LP 100, Flex radio 6600. Does he have 2 or 1? Just 1. And he's got this antenna X, looks like a cross matrix. What it says, A1, A2, R1. Dave, we're going to ask him. I'm going to have to ask him more about that. That looks really impressive. By the way, this rescales too. So if I was to look at this page on my iPhone, it would be all nicely vertical. I could just go up and go, yeah, I want that. So here's the reference stuff for you. These are just the links to my remote station video on my QRZ page. It gives you a bit more walkthrough. I do another one on it's essentially this presentation. Node-RED, where you find that, groups.io if you want to jump in on Node-RED. And by the way, the group I think works fairly well. We will help anybody, get you going. Dave's been instrumental in that. Alan Blind, same thing. A lot of flows that you guys might want are probably already done. And if there isn't, we'll probably help you with it. And Dave's done a great job at writing up a wiki to get you going. Let's see what else we got. We did a video on Node-RED a couple of weeks ago in the Flex channel. And then the last one's a training video done by this guy calls himself Opto Video, but they sort of get you into the core part of Node-RED. And that's all I have for you today. And that's the view from the top of my tower. So
any questions, guys? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people have been taking notes and asking, maybe have some questions. So why don't we open the floor and see if anybody's got something?
I'm just going to make a comment, Paul, if you can hear me okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mike, this was the talk you should have given at 4Z1UG's virtual Hamfest last summer. This was great.
Well, we're probably going to do, have we done his? Yeah, we'll do that. Anyway, we've got a bunch of them coming up. Actually, he's got me doing drones this time.
Oh, no. Okay. Well, as far as remote operation, this was amazing. Watching the trees in the background back last summer for an hour wasn't exactly what I was expecting, but this is the one I was expecting. And congratulations. Thanks.
Oh, you're welcome. I will be doing this one for the Baycon virtual one. So.
Well, it was awesome. I learned a lot here. I've got a ton of notes though. Man, oh man, because I spend all winter at a ski condo in the wintertime, and I really miss ham radio, right? So 5 months a year. So what I've been doing is coming home every couple of weeks to get a radio fix for a couple of days. Well, it'd be really cool just to be able to do it up there. So this is something I got to work towards.
Very good.
Has anybody interfaced a screwdriver antenna?
You could, because you just need the SWR voltage into an A to D converter. Not impossible, right, Dave? You just sample.
Yeah, you could either do either that, or you could do it where you're sampling and just do it in Node-RED from SWR from the radio too, if you have a CAT connection to the radio.
Yeah. So
Okay.
this is the Kmtronic web switch interface. And I'll just run through what some of the flows look like. And, you can, I have them in different tabs. I've got some disabled. The watt meter reading is just this middle part. I'm actually working at different stuff in below, pretty simple. The rotator part, we didn't mention something called Mosquito or MQTT, but you get the, so, this is Mosquito's a way to share the information to multiple devices. Andreas was a big, liked using MQTT.
Yeah, Mike, I'll make one comment on Mosquito. Let's say you have a master Pi in the shack that's running Node-RED, and you have another Pi out at the rotor, which could be, out in an outbuilding. You can run a Pi at the outbuilding and use Mosquito to get the information between them.
Yep. So this is just reading information from the radio. The Flex radio's TCP/IP port. TCP/IP port is wide open. We encourage people to write stuff to talk to it. People have asked me, where's Android or Linux? We're not going to write it, to be blunt, but if somebody else wants to write it, we'll help them. We keep going to the Linux crowd and saying, I've offered them hardware to go write it, and they're not interested. So I don't think we have enough hams who are developers that want to even bother. I don't know what the answer is. Let's see what else we got. This is monitoring. We broadcast radio information on a layer, and it's called a VITA 49 packet. So we just go in and we grab it, and we send this data packets back and forth, and they're called message payloads, or many things, but that's sort of the idea. So here's how I read my temperatures. I sort of brute force it. This little thing right here sends a command right into the terminal of the terminal session on the Pi, and I get a number back. And I started playing with set message color so that if it was below 0, the background was going to be blue. I haven't figured that out yet, Dave, but it's like 5 minutes worth of work, right? Where is it message.background? Something like that.
Right.
Okay. Post monitoring stuff. Here's the stepper control. And you see this one says TX/RX gate. So what happens is this device here sends every 1 second, 10 seconds, whatever, it sends a command and it says, hey, what are you doing? And then it goes out to the stepper and it says, and the command happens to be in the stepper world, $a carriage return, I think. And it gets punted out to the stepper and then it comes back into the stepper here. But I put this gate here and it says, hey, if the radio's in transmit, don't ask anything. Don't send it anything, don't ask anything. So it's and then here's where we write the GUI. That's sort of, if I got anything else. No, this is sort of cleaned up. So they're, if I was to send you this, and by the way, say I wanted to share my Kmtronic web switch, this one's a little cleaner, with Dave, I actually do this. I go export, there it is there. I just say copy to clipboard. He's got all that text we just saw export here. That's all in my clipboard. I can paste it into an email, send it to it. He imports it and it's done. He's got my code. And this sharing is just makes it just so easy to get around trying different things.
You could actually even do an export and download file, and it downloads it as a JSON. And so you could just import that file too.
Right there. So, and what does it look like? It looks like this. I don't know. Can you see that? Or is it just a screen on top of a... anyway, it just comes into it like a text file. Easy to share. Any other questions?
Mike, what was the name of the relay board for the Raspberry Pi?
It is a KS, if you go to eBay, KS0212. A second, I got one right here. My headset's too short. Looks like that in a box. And it's a Kilo Sierra 0212. And it's made by Keys Studio. Kilo Echo Yankee Echo Sierra Tango Uniform Delta Indy Oscar. I don't know, can you see that? Probably backwards.
Thank you very much.
And then you can actually, you can go to other boards. They make 16 port boards you can plug in or whatever. So I use my Kmtronic switches and I send them commands. I really don't use this for anything critical at my remote because with the Pi reboots, I don't want all the relays turning off, but consider that when you're building something, is it okay if you have to reboot your Pi if all your relays turn off and on? Especially if it's an internet relay, it's probably not a good idea. Can you just it's like cutting the tree down with a chainsaw and you're standing on the wrong side of the branch.
Mike, question about how the interface happens between the device and the Raspberry Pi. I think I saw in one of your earlier photos, you had that StarTech RS-232 to USB device. Are these things plugging into that and then reading via the Raspberry Pi through the USB? And then here on your Node Red flow, over on the left where we're seeing the connection to the device, I don't understand, or I don't see how. That's exactly what I was looking for. You're a step ahead of me. Thank you, sir.
And there's a couple of weird bugs here too that I haven't, that the guys have worked around. I haven't implemented. Every once in a while I'll edit this and then deploy it and then it won't read anything. And I find, Dave, here's what I find. I actually have to go in here and change something like the split, this 21 millisecond to 22 or some crazy number. And I think what it does is does a total reload on the driver and then it plays nice. But this is the part I think Andreas was saying, to use the full device
The
name
request node instead of the in and out.
Yeah. Anyway, there are ways around it. But so that's how we do that. The dashboard. So what happens is here, by the way, well, this little strip does is it's listening to commands from N1MM. And if I send it, if you're an N1MM operator, I send it Control J for a rotor movement. I want to see what I sent it. So it'll send it comes in here, some XML, it gets sent to the rotor turns. But I also, on my GUI here, we just grab it and I display it on the dashboard. So how do I get to the dashboard? This is probably the hardest thing about Node-RED is getting the dashboard to come up the first time. So you have to go here, no, here.
You can open up a new browser too. It's easier.
Now I know that, but the first time.
Okay.
Here, okay, here, dashboard. Click on this little icon here, and then you get your dashboard, which I'll blow up. And like Dave, you can have multiple things. You know, there's my Raspberry Pi control. It's almost screens I don't look at. I have this one I was playing with a big watt meter. It didn't work out so well. Here's my graphs for temperatures and things. You can see I was doing some testing. It says the number is odd. I forgot what I was testing. It was about a year ago, but you know, it's like, and there's the screen I look at all the time. And if I want to reverse my stepper, so it's the other way around, I can click like that, and now it's reversed. What I don't have is bidirectional wired yet. I probably need to redo the whole stepper stuff because between you and a bunch of guys have totally overhauled stepper programming. And by the way, that coding under the covers is not pretty. That's, excuse me, they do a lot of weird bit stuff, right, Dave, on the stepper control?
Yeah, some of it can get pretty intense, but the takeaway from this with Node-RED is pretty much just about anything with the serial USB or network connection, you can pretty much, you know, control or talk to. If there's a programming interface to that, like Elecraft on the KPA 1500, they published the programming interface manual for it. So with that said, I was able to write a flow using the Ethernet connection to the amp and be able to monitor and control the amplifier through Node-RED. You know, somebody had asked the other day, can you do the same, you know, is there a way with Node-RED to turn the Quadra on and off using the serial port? And the command doesn't exist, so the answer was no. But there's other ways.
Any other questions?
I've got a question on your antenna switching.
Yep.
Can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Okay. I'm curious, is your antenna switching done by Flex, a product from Flex, or is that external?
Let me show you. I just have to get the right, I just have to migrate a screen from somewhere to somewhere. I was talking earlier to the guys, I use, oh, I'm on the wrong one. I use Windows Virtual Desktop for a lot of things. So I just got to migrate something from a virtual desktop over. And I'll show you.
While you're doing that, Mike, I'll elaborate. The flow from that we've written for the Antenna Genius 2x8 will do a stack of up to 4 of those, which means you can have 32 antennas with 2 radios. And you can have it programmed to follow the band of the radio, and also have it where you can manually select it from Node-RED to select any antenna that's available on that particular band. And you can have it lock out antennas that are not available for that band.
So is this sharing?
Yeah.
Chris.
What are you seeing? You seeing the big meter here, the flex meter?
Yep.
Okay, good. All right. And actually, I brought that up for Dave because I don't know. The guys have been dealing with meter interfacing. So here's the control for the SO2R 2x8 antenna switch from 403A, and it's a couple of things. So it's got 2 inputs and outputs, and in my case, I have a 6600, which is like 2 radios. So I configure radio port A and port B to talk to the radio or whatever, and then I define that antenna port 1 is my stepper, and it deals with all these bands, type of thing. So that's how that works. So the 403 antenna switch actually, the actual box listens to the radio stuff coming right off the radio. So even I can kill this application, and it will still automatically switch as I change bands. It is a beautiful integration. It is pretty tank proof.
So is that an actual Flex product?
Mm-hmm. 403A makes it. We just resell it in the US.
Okay.
And by the way, you'll notice I'm going to go down to my normal desktop. And if you watch here, the stepper, I'm actually on a different web page and I just put it back to normal. You see it updated on the second browser. You know, I can turn my 40 meter beam here. So if you watch here, I'll turn it on. So, you know, so.
This is all happening up in the Kawarthas, right?
Yeah. So this is the remote desktop screen for the radio. So this is, you can see that, you know, 192, 168, 110. I happen to have a VPN running, but you don't need to. I've got Slice Master running, which will automatically start WSJT or Skimmer or whatever. So to answer, I'm not sure who asked that. Chris, did I get all your questions?
Yeah, that helps. I'm trying to add more ports to my 6300 and have it change automatically when I'm away.
Are you, and you're also a 6 meter operator?
Yes.
So one of the cool things I've offered to people with 6300s and 6400s is, because you only have one spectral capture unit, is you can grab a $50 or $60 diplexer that has an HF split. So you got HF on one 10 feed line and 6 on the other.
Yeah,
and
I've got one.
you got, so you know what to do. So sort of a poor man's dual spectral capture unit, but it, you know, other than you can't use the tuner, it does give you the option to be on HF and 6 on 2 different slices.
So you're taking antenna port 1, let's say, going into the diplexer, going out 6 meters on one side and HF on the other.
Yep.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. So, you know, it's repeater work, but type of thing, you know, so you get the high pass on 6 and the low pass below 40 megs. So
excellent.
So speaking of antenna switches, if you let me share the screen, I'll show you something that someone else just pointed out to me. I wasn't aware of this product. And let me get this here. Yeah. Okay, so if you see, you see it's an eBay product right now.
Yep. Yeah, no, I'm looking at it.
Yeah, so I was talking to another station, who's another ham here in the Denver, well, Colorado area that's building a remote station, and they're talking about, you know, antenna switches that could be computer controlled, okay, and had some kind of desktop app. And he pointed this out to me. These are actually coming from Bulgaria, of all places.
That's surprising.
But it looks pretty decent. The specs are pretty decent if you go to the web page. Also, they have lower cost. It's not on here, but they have, if you only need a 4-port one, I think they got one for like 130 bucks. I mean, it's like, I couldn't even believe the price, right? So again, just there's a lot of choices out there. And
is that a 1x6 or a 3x6?
It's actually a 1x7.
Okay.
So it's a 1x7, and it has that unit you see up at the top there, which is the control unit. But the control unit is Wi-Fi connectable, and you can access it through a web browser.
Nice.
And like I said, they have some less expensive units also. But yeah, I mean, it was just interesting find.
And Bill, I'm looking at your screen in the background, and that's what my remote used to look like. I had PST rotor running.
Well,
I had KPA 500 running.
Yeah, I was going to show
the same
this to
stuff.
everybody. So
no, go ahead.
Yeah, just for 2 minutes, since we were talking about remote stations. But yeah, this is my remote station setup. It's actually a 2-screen setup, so you're seeing kind of the radio control or equipment control screen, and then if I scroll over to the second screen, you know, here's my you know, operating screen. Or, you know, if it was a contest, this would be filled with N1MM windows, of course.
Same thing.
Yeah, yeah. And this is all, I mean, I'm actually, Paul and I use Splash Top as our remote access. We like that because it can support 2 monitors simultaneously. And One of the
Really?
yeah. And well, you have to get the business version for $100 a year. Okay, I'll pay that. But it does a great job of supporting 2 monitors simultaneously. Paul, our host here, and I I've lost track. Not last weekend, the weekend before, we operated the ARRL Ready Roundup contest from this station as a multi-op. And so I'd be on for a few hours, and then I'd turn it over to him for a few hours, and he'd turn it back to me for a few hours. And we didn't blow any equipment up in the process, which was nice.
It's hard to blow stuff up really today. Stuff is so well protected.
You haven't seen us do it though.
Yeah, I'll just point out one interesting thing for folks, and that is that my actual radio, if you can read the small print down here, is an ICOM 7600. But the spectrum scope up here is running an SDR, the SDR Play product, and I have it wired through my radio, so it's always on the same bands that I'm on. And anyway, I've had this set up for almost 2 years now. Worked many contests, worked thousands of contacts on it. But as you pointed out, Mike, I kind of have this potpourri of a whole bunch of different user interfaces here, right?
Yep.
The antenna tuner, the amp, the antenna switch, all this. It might be nice to have it all in one, nice little dashboard instead.
I think most of it's all written already.
Yeah, it is.
And you can still use PST Rotator and have it. I actually sometimes bring up PST Rotator to send the. See, another one I don't have, Dave, is I don't have a recalibrate command in my Node-RED yet. I'm sure someone else has already got that written, right? So.
Yeah, you might want to check out Alan. Alan took Andreas's code and he wrote a Node-RED flow, or updated it for the step IR for the full, like your model. So
I was hoping Alan was going to send me his PC satellite control screen, because I don't know if you've seen it, but I don't know. He must not have slept for a month. And
I think from when he wakes up in the morning to when he goes to bed at night, and even in the middle of the night, he must be doing stuff because he's always coming up with something.
He looks forward for the challenge. So if you want to get on and say, hey, I've got this switch, and it looks like this, just, that's okay. I'll get to it. And it'll probably be done in about an hour.
Yeah. Well, just so you guys know, Alan helped me put together the Node-RED dashboard for my LA1K. And
yeah, I actually was the one that wrote it, but Alan got a hold of me, and together we did it.
Yeah,
in about a day, right? You guys did that in about a day.
Yeah,
yeah.
Alan had me like, okay, now Paul, connect this box to this box. Okay, so I just pulled it across and said, okay, now you got to do this, and he explained everything as I was going along here. And like when I first started, it was like really weird, right? I didn't have no idea what I was doing. And then towards the end of it, I'm actually changing stuff, which is kind of weird. And I haven't been able to break it too badly.
Exactly. And if somebody had sent you C# code with all, with the IDE, you'd have been, WTF. So I know what it's supposed to do, but I just don't see it. So
let me just show you guys really quick what we did like in a day, and just to kind of.
I see the gears turning in Dana's head. They're just grinding away there.
He's always got gears turning somewhere. But let's see. Can you see it? Yes. All right. So like this is the Node-RED dashboard I got up here, and I made it go sideways because it fit better on my screen. So you can make these things any way you want. And the other one, let me switch over to the other screen. This is the other screen, and let me just pull it down so you guys can see everything. And so this is kind of like some of the stuff we get, and I can add more information if it's coming out of the amplifier. But
so what browser are you using? Is that Chrome?
No, it's Mozilla, or what do you call it?
You might be able to shrink that too with just Control- key. Just if the fonts are too big, and just make it a little tighter.
I didn't know that. Control- key.
Yep.
Oh, we'll see. I'm learning as we go along here. There we go.
There you go. See? Keep
Holy
going.
shucks. I wish I had known this. I'm learning how to use Windows now. Anyway, that was it. And the code was really, oh yeah, I got to show you guys, see if I can show you the code, if I can find it. Let's see. What are these?
That was fun.
Maybe
That was fun with the
192,
code, but once we got the information that you got from Paul at Palstar, it actually wasn't that difficult.
No, I mean, that was it. I just asked Paul at Palstar, I said, can you send me the stuff that comes out of the back of your amplifier? I said, yeah, okay, here you go.
I kid you not, a year ago, that conversation wouldn't have happened that way.
I've asked him for that for the HF Auto, and he basically threatened to sue me.
Well, you just need to have Paul ask then.
Yeah, it's just all about me.
So Paul, just strip off everything after the 1880 on your bar at the top.
Okay, if I can know how to do that. There we go. Backspace, enter. All right, loading forms. And so this, let's see, how do I make it full screen? There's too many buttons here. There we go. There's the full screen. So you can see this thing, COM9, is talking to my amplifier all the time. And it's just timing out every second or so. And that's like part of it. And you get all these little forward power, reflection power, mode, function. These are all the different things that are coming out of the amplifier. Further on down here, I got the antenna selector. So, and I've got like one for my big picture and one for the small antenna thing with all the different buttons. And then right down below here, we have the mode select. So I can go into different operating standby, when I want to push the key down. And what else we got in here? And we got the N1MM frequency command. Well, I'm not using it right now, but I'm using it for the HRD connector. So I'm connecting to the HRD radio or the HRD software to pull the frequency over and put it onto that the LA1K screen. So that's what this little thing does. And
so I was going to interrupt. For everybody else, you see all those green boxes? Those are for debug messages. Those are debugs. They're like printf statements. So if you want to know what's coming out at that message, you can go look at it and say, well, what really got sent here? And if you bring up the debug window, Paul, in the upper right, do you know where that is?
Yeah, let's see.
Looks like a little bug icon. Should we just second from the right in the upper right?
Right below the deploy.
Oh yeah.
Click the ladybug.
One more to the right.
There you go.
Is that it? Okay, there it is.
Yeah, and so there's commands coming back. So something doesn't work, you go, well, what's in message payload in the debug command? So
yeah,
incredibly helpful.
Yeah, and then you always have to remember to deploy your changes. That's all, and save everything.
Yeah, it's easy to back up.
So again, like I'm a guy who doesn't know anything about this stuff, and if I can do it, you can do it. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, open up the function node in the upper next to the inject in the upper left there. That orange one in the upper left.
Oh,
the one that says command.
Oh yeah, LA1.
Yeah.
This one here.
Yeah, open it up. This is pretty much what's being sent to the amplifier to interrogate the amp and have the information come back of all the different meters and the status and the antenna and everything else. So that's what we're sending as a command to the amplifier.
Pretty easy.
So if you know the programming interface for whatever device you're going to talk to, you just have to send it that command and then know what to expect in a return, and then take the pieces that are returned and then have it display on the dashboard.
And that's just Java code, right?
No, that's just in other words, that's just text. That's just plain text being sent to the amplifier. Like if you were to hook up a terminal program into a serial port and just type it in.
So it says AR1 and then /R and /N. That's it?
Yeah. And it's just basically doing an interrogation of the amplifier.
Pretty cool. Anyway, let's see if I can get out of this screen somehow. Let's see,
hit the back key.
All right, I just want to hit the stop share. There we go. No, I wanted Dave's beautiful face there. Now you're on their date, by the way. You're still sharing. Just so you know, looking at your beautiful hat.
Hey, look at that. New York Giants.
Oh, yeah. How old is that?
Man, they were horrible this year. That whole division was horrible.
Any other questions, guys? I mean, there's got to be a lot of stuff there. You guys, maybe everybody knows everything.
Question about internet. Do we see much problems with UDP sharing through ISPs?
We don't. No, at least not in major internets. We have problems in Europe. We have problems in Europe where ISPs are only deploying IPv6. Believe it or not, and the only problems we have commercially with people in SmartLink and stuff is when they get into the small one-man shops. We had a customer in sort of rural North Carolina where he thought, he goes, "You're running a server, you're not allowed to." So he actually terminated his account because he was streaming data back out.
The other thing that I've seen, Mike, is when I'm helping people, is a lot of times, like a friend of mine out in Ohio, he's in a retirement community, and they have like one public IP for the whole community, and then they're behind a router that then assigns private IPs. So when he was trying to do SmartLink, he needed his ISP to open up port forwarding in their routers in order to make it work. And not just for Flex. I'm talking about if you wanted to run Node-RED remotely or anything like that.
Okay, I've got a Mountain ISP off in the sticks, and it's a wireless ISP, so that's a concern. But
yeah, they may be doing a single public IP, and
I'm paying for a dedicated IP so that I can run through that. But the UDP apparently isn't working. I've only been at this for a very short period of time, but on the Flex, I'm not getting my waterfalls, and that's something I just have to hit the ISP up and see.
Mike, you think if he, it might be an issue of him lowering down his MTU a little bit?
Yeah, there's a Flex setting on the for MTU. Try dropping it down to 1300 or 1250.
Okay, sounds a good plan. Appreciate that.
Yeah, it should be under the network settings under Smart SDR. The MTU size, you go into advanced, and there's an MTU size adjustment.
Well, this is the only thing that I've tried so far is using the iOS from the phone or an iPad, and it's running to where the station location is. I don't know if I'm going to put the station at that location. I probably will at some point, but one step at a time.
Yeah, we've had several of that, and then I actually do a presentation for our contest club. It's, anywhere you've got a great HF station, you have crappy internet.
Exactly.
I've got a UDP question if you guys have time for it.
Yep.
So I've got a 6300. When I connect with my phone on my LAN, my local area, when I'm using cellular data, I can connect and have receive audio, but no transmit audio. So this was strange. So I hooked into a friend's Flex and it worked just fine. So to me, I thought I had a firewall problem. So I came back and looked at my UDP and TCP port settings. They were all correct. They both passed, and no problems there. However, when I'm away, I can take a laptop and hook it to my cell phone and get in no problem. I just can't get in with my cell phone.
So here's what's happening. Yeah.
Hey,
so the reason your friends work just fine is when you loaded and connect to him, it loaded the profiles from his radio. So whatever settings you had in your phone got overly total written. When you connected to yours, you've got a configuration issue. I'd say just open a support ticket, but there's several things you have to